The Virginia Horse Industry Board, Southwest Virginia Agricultural Association, and the Virginia Christmas Tree Growers Association are proud sponsors of Virginia farming.
This program's brought to you by the Virginia Farm Bureau. Large or small, Virginia farmers work year-round to help put food on your table. And Farm Bureau works year-round to help farmers and all Virginians. Farming, it's all good. To learn more, go to vafarmbureau.org.
Polaris, offering its hardest working, smoothest riding off-road ATVs, led by the rugged, more powerful Sportsman 850 HO. Hunt, farm, or trail. Polaris has the Sportsman ATV you want at Polaris.com.
Brought to you by Farm Family. Life, auto, business, farm. Steve Morse, fruit grower, distiller, entrepreneur. Another personal story on farmfamilypeople.com. Farm Family, the people you know. Hi everybody, welcome to Virginia Farming. I'm Amy Rocher. This week we're talking about timber theft and how to prevent it when Adam Downing and Joe Lehnen join us on Ag Insights. Then we'll talk about dividing and replanting in the spring when we go in the garden. Plus we'll have the Ag Calendar and a Minute in the Field video. All this plus the Ag News of the Week on this edition of Virginia Farming. The Virginia Farm Bureau Federation has entered into an agreement to assume full ownership of the State Fair of Virginia and the Meadow Event Park from Universal Fairs, LLC. Virginia Farm Bureau President Wayne Pryor said that it was a very proud day for the Farm Bureau, noting that the two companies parted ways amicably. Farm Bureau, which had been 50% owner since last July, entered into an agreement on the remaining 50% and will continue to operate the State Fair and many other events on the historic property that was once home to Secretariat. Pryor said that there's no better way to showcase agriculture than through the State Fair, and Farm Bureau plans to expand and improve this wonderful event beginning this year and well into the future. This year's fair will run September 27th through October 6th. Well, a county fair is the setting for this year's book from Ag in the Class, Kelly's Big Day. Last week was Agriculture Week in the Commonwealth, and it was also Ag Literacy Week. Lots of ag leaders throughout the state took some time to read to school children about the importance of Virginia agriculture. Ag Week brought out a lot of agriculture advocates to schools all over the state. Even VDAC's Commissioner Matt Lohr got in on the fun.
Once a year we can just pause and take a week to really thank the farmers and thank those folks in agriculture for the hard work that they do. And adding the ag literacy component is extra rewarding, that we can go in and really plant those seeds with the younger folks, and hopefully some of them may end up following a career in agriculture one day themselves.
Planting that seed was as easy as reading a book or two.
I think it's just so neat to come in and see the expression on kids' faces when you talk about agriculture. And it means a lot to come and read at Carson School, and to have my daughter Caroline come and share in that. It really is a very rewarding opportunity.
In her brother's class, Caroline Lohr read Kelly's Big Day, a book about a girl showing her calf at the county fair. Why is Ag Literacy Week so important to her?
For all the kids who don't necessarily live on a farm, they don't really think about where their food comes from or where they get their clothes and all that stuff. And if somebody tells them or reads it to them, they'll understand better.
What did they think of the book?
It really was a good book. I thought it was. They were taking care of sheep and cows, and they were taking them to the fair. It's realistic, like it happens. Like you have to wash your sheep and you have to wash your cow and all that stuff. The only thing I would disagree with it is you don't win first place every time.
When the reading was over, a lot of the kids came away with the same information.
Lots and lots of things come from farms.
So what do you think about growing up on a farm?
It would be pretty cool. Just the fact that, instead of a playhouse, you have a big barn, or instead of a little dog, you have 2 or 3 goats or sheep or whatever. So it's me personally, I think it's better.
USDA researchers are studying ways to make crops more disease resistant. The USDA's Bob Ellison has more.
U.S. Department of Agriculture researcher Richard Jones wants to help plants defend themselves against disease. Currently, Jones is working with potatoes at the Agricultural Research Service labs in Beltsville, Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C.
One of the biggest disease problems is referred to as late blight, and it's an organism that gets on the potatoes and then sweeps through the field and basically kills them off. Its greatest claim to fame was the Irish potato famine, which was caused by late blight, and surprisingly, it's still a problem today, and it's over 100 years later.
Jones and colleagues are using genetic engineering to help potatoes fight off late blight without the use of fungicides.
With genetic engineering, you're able to expand the options of moving genes around and manipulating them. Economically, it's good because the growers don't have to put as much money into protecting their crop. The environment is better off because there's no application of fungicides. There's no use of fossil fuels to apply the fungicides.
Jones says researchers are very careful when using genetic engineering to make plants better at protecting themselves.
Any genetically engineered crop plant goes through extensive regulation, both on environmental impact and potential toxicity, anything. So it's very heavily screened.
The U.S. potato crop is valued at over $4 billion annually. For the U.S. Department of Agriculture, I'm Bob Ellison.
Thank you, Bob. Well, potatoes are not a specialty crop, but VDAX is accepting applications for specialty crop block grant funds. Agricultural associations, industry groups, community-based organizations, and producer groups that seek to improve the competitiveness of specialty crops in Virginia are eligible to submit proposals for grants up to $30,000 per project. Although individual producers are not eligible, they may join with groups and organizations to apply for these grants. The deadline for returning applications to VDAX is 5 p.m. April 17th of this year. The funding begins October 1st and lasts for 2 years. Now, specialty crops are categorized as fruits, vegetables, tree nuts, dried fruits, and nursery crops, including floriculture, that are not typically covered by traditional crop insurance. VDAX Commissioner Matt Lohr said they have seen many grant-funded projects or research yield positive long-term economic benefits for specialty crops, and he encourages producer groups to take advantage of this opportunity. Grant proposals need to be specific and explain how an association, industry, group, or organization will use the funds to enhance the competitiveness of specialty crops. Some examples include research, promotion and marketing plans, as well as food safety projects. Guidelines, instructions, and the application for the USDA Specialty Crop Competitive Grants are available online at the website on your screen. Well, good news may be on the horizon for cattle farmers. In this segment, Cindy Campbell talks with Cattle Facts about the beef supply and demand picture for 2013 and what that will do to prices.
Cattle Facts predicts record high beef prices and quality premiums in 2013. Although drought still blankets much of the United States, cow herd liquidation has slowed and more heifers are being retained for breeding. That combination means beef production will be down about 2.5%.
We're a little concerned about the price point for beef as we go to higher prices, and we're suggesting that retail prices will be up about 4% this year. The price spread between beef, poultry, and pork has widened out over time, and because of that, we're seeing less featuring at retail. And we think we're losing a few of our customers just because of that price point.
Although per capita disposable income will be flat to slightly lower this year, there is some good news for cattlemen.
We've got consumers that have plenty of income. They might be tied to corporate profits. We still have a stock market that's trading near record levels. So you've got folks out there that have dollars to spend. And because of that, we continue to believe that we'll continue to see wider spreads for CAB, top two-thirds choice, and prime product over select products. So look for wider spreads in 2013.
Due to scarce supplies, feeder calf values will advance 5% in 2013. Developed heifers and bred cows will also fetch a premium, Good says, especially those that can produce premium beef.
That represents an opportunity for cattlemen to produce more of that type of product to get paid bigger premiums over commodity beef.
a silver lining that could boost profitability when herds recover from the drought. I'm Cindy Campbell.
Thank you, Cindy. Timber theft is on the rise, and many landowners don't even know their timber is at risk. I talked with Forestry and Natural Resources Agent Adam Downing and Virginia Department of Forestry Agent Joe Lehnen. That's straight ahead on Ag Insights. Today we're talking about timber theft and how to prevent it. Joining us is Forestry and Natural Resources Agent Adam Downing and Virginia Department of Forestry Joe Lehnen. And Joe, I mispronounced your name earlier and I do apologize.
No, that's quite all right, Amy.
But anyway, welcome to Virginia Farming.
Thanks, good to be here.
Yeah, it sure is.
A lot of folks own land for a myriad of reasons. So how did this topic of timber theft come up?
Right, so we're here talking about timber theft per se, but timber is just one of the many reasons why some people own forest land. And in fact, it's usually low on the list for why people own forest land. They own it for the scenic beauty that they appreciate, the recreational opportunities, hunting, fishing, just to walk in the woods, or source of firewood, whatever the reason may be. But in many cases, those same people who own the land for other reasons that are more important to them will eventually sell timber, or their neighbors are going to sell timber. And that's usually the situation where timber theft may become a problem. It's a pretty rare occurrence, actually, and doesn't look any different. It's still going to be a stump on the ground or multiple stumps. And so we'll unpack this a little bit with why it happens and how it happens.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So how does someone come in and steal a tree or multiple trees, and how does it happen?
Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, well, a lot of times it's more of a miscommunication between the landowner and the logger or the timber buyer. Several times, we've seen where folks purchase land and they really are kind of unsure of where their boundary lines are, or maybe they have not marked their boundary lines in a number of years and they just kind of forget as to exactly where they are. And then when they try to show the property lines to the logger or timber buyer, they're not exactly in the right location, even on their own property. They may be over on their neighbors a little bit or whatever. And that is really one of the biggest problems that we have as far as how timber gets removed from somebody's property that is not part of the sale.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, and it can be done really by anybody, whether it's someone who's purchased the land for logging and the boundaries just are not marked, or someone who's going out to, cut firewood, what they think is on their own land. So it's really unintentional.
In most cases, it is unintentional. The players that are usually involved, the ultimate responsibility boils down to the landowner in this situation to, like Joe said, know where those property boundaries are and communicate those very clearly to whoever else is involved in that timber sale. A logger is going to be the one who is either intentionally or unintentionally involved in actually severing that tree from the stump and taking it to the market. In most cases, it is unintentional. Loggers, by and large, are hard-working guys and gals that are trying to make a living like the rest of us.
Right.
And their reputation is a very important part of their business. So they do not want to steal timber. In most cases, they're going to stay well back from that boundary line. But if it's in the wrong place, you may still be over the boundary line.
Sure. So that comes back again, like Joe said, to the landowner.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what about intentional theft?
Mm-hmm.
That's hard for me to grasp because, you think of theft of like somebody picking up a pack of gum in a store,
right.
But a tree?
Right.
Wow. I mean, you can't just stick that in your coat pocket and walk away. So how does that happen?
Kind of hard to hide, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So how does it happen?
A lot of times it happens, sometimes the boundary lines are well marked, but there's maybe a tree over there that is a really good quality tree, and it could be an absentee landowner, and maybe the person who's cutting firewood or harvesting timber might think that nobody will ever miss it. Maybe for whatever reason they didn't see the boundary line and they go over there, but it does happen. We've even had trees in the Northern Virginia area be stolen out of people's yards you know, where it'll be a valuable tree or something like that, and they'll come home one day and all of a sudden their tree's gone. And so that is obviously intentional,
Right.
without a doubt. And it just involves people with the right equipment, sometimes not even people in the timber industry, really. Just somebody that has the right equipment that knows how to market that log.
Well, and somewhere in a yard, you're obviously going to notice that it's gone.
Exactly.
But if you're a landowner with a lot of wooded area, you may not notice, and I guess somebody could actually come in and pick off trees, you know, kind of slowly, and you may never even realize that it's happening.
Right.
But it's a loss of money in different ways. It's a loss of an income if you're planning on ever selling that as lumber. And then it's also, you know, downgrading the forestry area that you have.
Exactly, and a lot of people have personal attachments to their trees. You know, and they, I don't know how else to say this, but it feels like they've been violated.
Right.
Because they do love their trees, and the thought of, you know, missing trees or trees that have been cut that shouldn't have been cut, you know, it really affects them personally.
And another place that I've heard we've talked about a little bit is the under market sales is another way that people are, it's not stealing, but maybe you're
Right.
getting a little ripped off and you need to pay attention.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about that, Adam.
Yeah, well, we want to be careful not to associate an under-market sale with a timber theft, because there's nothing illegal with someone who buys timber at a really good price for them, not so good for the landowner. And so this is one of our continuing educational efforts with the partnerships represented here and others, is teaching people how to sell their timber. It's a rare occurrence. You sell timber once, twice, maybe 3 times in a year, in a lifetime, excuse me. And so to get the fair price, and is entirely market driven, you've got to play the market game and market that timber.
Buyer beware and pay attention to what's going on.
Right.
So let's quickly go over some ways that we can prevent timber theft.
Yeah.
We've talked about boundaries and marking them. Joe, do you want to address that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's essential that people either mark their boundaries and make sure that they mark them correctly according to a legal survey, or, you know, another easy way to do it is to just get with your neighbor and agree upon where the boundary is. If you're thinking about conducting a timber sale, just, you know, call your neighbor up and say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I want to make sure that my boundary and your boundary is right. Let's get out there, we'll mark it with plastic flagging or paint or whatever, and that way we're both on the same page.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And communication, as was brought out earlier, is really important, whether you're the one selling timber or your neighbors are selling timber. You can develop a relationship with your adjoining landowners so that you're in communication with each other about when you're selling timber, or if you see a harvest happening, calling that neighbor and saying, I see you're selling timber, just want to make sure that everyone knows that.
You know that that's going on, right?
Right. So.
Okay, and now what about at the lumber yard? How do you keep track of what's going on there? What's the best bet if you're selling any lumber? What's your best bet?
Well, in terms of the sawmills that buy logs, they don't know if they're stolen or not, obviously, and they're not marked in any special way. The best way to sell timber in general is working with a private consulting forester to get the best price. In most cases, those trees are going to be marked with paint, but there's nothing saying that someone can't put a spot of paint on a tree.
Exactly. Okay. So just kind of pay attention, maybe ask for receipts so you know what you're getting and what you've sold.
Yeah, and that again pertains more to the under-market sale, not so much to the theft. But yes, that's a good way to do it too.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, thank you for the information, and we want to get that out there to all of our landowners so they can protect themselves.
That sounds good.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you, Amy.
Thank
It's
you very
been
much.
great.
We'll be right back. If you divide and replant your plants in the spring, they will produce beautifully and develop good root systems. Let's join Mark Viette in the garden.
Spring is one of the best times to go out in the garden and just enjoy. And what you can do is divide your plants. You can divide everything from liriope and hostas and epimediums and daylilies and Solomon seal. These are just plants that you dig up out of the ground carefully. You shake the soil off as best you can. Sometimes you have to wash them, and then you either pull them apart or divide them with knives or hatchets. The reason I like spring is these plants really haven't grown much. You know, they're only maybe a ½ an inch. Some haven't even popped up out of the ground. So when you divide them and you plant them back in the garden, they just take off like a rocket and send out brand new roots. But just go out in the garden and pull off all the dead foliage. This is a daily, just like this. Now sometimes people ask how frequently you divide. Some plants you can divide every year, but I recommend maybe one time every 3 to 5 years. And so here your dailies, then you just take your shovel and you come right around and just dig right around the daily, just like this. And usually what I like to do is just cut all the way around it so it's easy to lift when you're done. And then just make that final cut, just like this. And I find if you just drop it, it shakes a lot. Sometimes you'll come back in and do it again. Pick it up, take the top part of the shovel, and shake it just like this. If you're lucky, you can just take your hands and pull apart the plants. But if it's a really old, mature plant, I'm going to show you what you do with those. A couple of my favorite tools, of course, a little sharp razor if you need to divide those little plants. I also like a stiff knife, not a knife that bends, because knives that bend and warp can cut you if you're not careful. But my favorite is a meat cleaver, and this is when you have a really bad day, take it out on your plants. What I've got here is some plants that are all ready to be divided. They have been shaken, and they've also been washed. And sometimes when you're dealing with little plants, this is a small hosta called lemon lime, and each bud means one plant. So it's been washed, ready to go, and what I do is carefully take my knife. In some cases you can pull plants out, or you need to gently take your knife. That is a plant. Now for most of us in our own garden usage, I really like a bigger plant, something like this, because you're going to get your return on the plant and you're going to get a flower on it and to fill in better if it's larger. Of course, we have dailies, and many of us are familiar with Stella d'Oro. This is a plant, if you divide every year, in less than 10 years, you'll have 20,000 plants. And you can make your plants as small as this, or just take your knife, and the key with dividing dailies is you've got to take your knife, make sure you use the sharp side down, insert your knife and twist it, and you'll hear a crack. Just don't chop the plant. And what I might do is cut this again in half. I might make 5 plants out of this. Now for those really tough plants, a knife really doesn't work. But I'm going to use my meat cleaver. This is a hosta, but this hosta just makes a few plants, and you just put your hand behind your back at all times. You know, a lot of us have a tendency to rearrange the plant. And there's your plant. It's that easy. And if you want to divide things like liripy that have foliage, you can pull them apart, but the important thing, as I mentioned earlier, if there's any foliage present on the plants, you're ready to go, fill up your garden, or give your plants to your neighbors. I'm Mark Viette. Join me next time in the garden.
Taking a look at our ag calendar, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation is seeking volunteers to help plant native trees to create a riparian buffer along a farm stream in the Smith Creek watershed near Harrisonburg on Saturday, April 6th. For more information about the tree planting and to RSVP by April 3rd, contact Robert Jennings by phone or email. The 27th Annual Daffodil Festival will be held in Gloucester April 6th and 7th. There will be a parade, guided tours of Brent and Becky's bulbs, food, crafts, and entertainment for the entire family. Daffodil bulbs will be on sale for fall delivery. You can find more information at visitgloucesterva.org. That does it for our show. Have a great week, everyone. I'm Amy Rocher for Virginia Farming.
This program's brought to you by the Virginia Farm Bureau. From apples to zucchini, Virginia farmers work hard to put food on your table. And Farm Bureau works year-round to help farmers and all Virginians. Farming, it's all good. To learn more, go to vafarmbureau.org.
Polaris, offering its hardest working, smoothest riding full-size workhorses, including the all-new 60-horsepower Ranger XP 900. Hunt, farm, or trail. Polaris has the full-size Ranger you want at Polaris.com.
Brought to you by Farm Family, Life, Auto, Business, Farm. Jim Gray, farmer's son, agribusiness owner, insurance agent. Another personal story on farmfamilypeople.com. Farm Family, the people you know.